Sorry, guys. I normally post a little bit sooner than this, but I've been dealing with a lot today, and I'll keep you guys updated on what's going on. It's a little bit of a tricky situation, but we're gonna get through it. Uh, I'll give you more info about it after I get you caught up on these updates that I put together for you. But ultimately, the times that we're in, the struggles that we're all facing, they hit everybody differently. And, just a warning, like I always try to do, just share with you guys what's going on and keep you guys as best informed and knowledgeable so you can better prepare for you and your families. Is that, as the struggles continue, everyone continues to get tested, people are on edge. Uh, People get pushed to the breaking point, and relationships are just going to get tested, and people are going to manage the stress a little bit differently and better or worse than others. Nothing against anybody, but we're just going through a few things right now. But I'm not going to let it stop me from doing what I feel is right and bringing you guys the information that I think is going to be very helpful to you and your families to better prepare for SHTF and rising inflation and possible layoffs and just all the craziness that's going on with the gas prices and diesel shortages. And there's a lot of new legislation that's being proposed and bills that are going through the House that if they make it through and get passed ultimately through the Senate and get signed off on, we're going to see some drastic changes, some for the better, some for the worst. But I'm going to keep bringing you guys these updates. But real quick, let me just get into it. And I've done some research and I've had some conversations, and I continuously get emails and have these talks with different people through email and in the group. And the people, they're getting desperate. They're getting desperate for cash, and we're seeing more and more folks turning to pawn shops now as some form to get some form of relief during these times where money's just tight and prices are just going up left and right. And, this is at a time where it's about 20% of the adult population does not have a bank account. So, if they need that little extra money, these are the things that they have to do, or at least they feel they have to do to get that money because they don't have any other options really. So these pawn shops are seeing a uptick. Uh, but it comes down to gas prices are killing folks. Food prices are really putting a strain on incomes and budgets, and it's a struggle. Meanwhile, lower income people are being affected much worse in comparison to about what's going on is really the lower income folks have it a little bit harder than those in the upper income brackets, the higher tax bracket, so to speak. And on top of that, we just have a government that's dead set on creating more inflation and less jobs. So it's not like it's really getting any better. It's just continuously getting worse. There are a lot of people, especially young people, who have worked or are working the gig economy to try and get by and just make it, doing jobs like Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, Walmart Spark, and they have to get creative because it's tough. And this kind of goes into what I was talking about in the beginning of the video. And we've had a little bit of a situation, and some relationships are being tested, and lending money and loaning money to friends and family. And we've talked about this before, and I don't want to be the cause for it, but I do think that we're going to see an influx and increase in the amount of people that are going to be probably moving out, being evicted, foreclosed on, and possibly just moving towards a lifestyle of being homeless. Not so much being like poor or like completely destitute, but just like not having a physical permanent residence and living out of their car just to get by. And this is while rents are much higher than before, adding difficulties to specifically single moms. They're not the only ones, but single moms definitely get a little bit more of the weight thrown on them. Uh, And it's hard enough as it is raising kids, but then you do it on your own. But then it's like if you do it on your own and living in a car or something like that, it's just it's complex. But it's much like the pawn shops. It's like you don't really have too many other options laid out in front of you immediately, and all this inflation is just devastating. It's making people resort to things that they just normally wouldn't have ever considered. And for those who live in rural places like out in the country, it's even a little harder, especially with the job market out there, because it's like few and far between. And then the advancement opportunities and higher income earning potential opportunities are limited. But sometimes it's like a half an hour drive to the grocery store just one way, and then it's another half hour or more back. And you add that to the high price of gas, and it's just really impacting people uh, every single day. With reports sharing information that credit card cash advance fees are on the rise too, which, it's like if you think about it, it's like, you got the pawn shop, get some quick cash maybe. Then you're looking at reducing your overhead expenses and and working on your budget. So it's like, look, we're just gonna live out of this car for a little while, save some money. But then some people are looking at it like, I can at least get some cash out of this credit card. But the credit card companies know that the people are desperate for money, and specifically cash. So for some transactions that don't accept credit cards, looking at per se, looking at using your credit card for a cash advance is like an option. It's like, think about like if you had to make a car payment or you needed to pay a babysitter so you could go to work, or sometimes to pay your rent, depending on your landlord or property manager. If they don't accept the credit card, you'd have to, and you don't have the money, you may be looking at like, I can at least do a cash advance on my card, pull cash out on the credit card and use that to pay the bill. But the cash advance fees on several mainstream credit cards have risen, making it more expensive to withdraw cash or carry out transactions that are treated in the same way as cash, basically. With many credit cards, they allow holders to withdraw cash at ATMs in the same way that you would use your PIN number and a debit card. But these cash advance withdrawals should be, in my opinion, avoided because, at all costs, really, because especially now that users will more than likely be hit with an immediate cash advance fee, as well as the usual high APR from the minute you take the cash out. And now it's not like a cycle, and once you get your statement, you can pay it back free and clear. The cash advance typically hits you immediately with the APR interest. So basically, this means that this will be one of the more expensive ways to borrow money. Period. And some other credit card transactions may also be treated as a cash advance, including buying foreign currency and those related to like betting or gambling, which right now you really shouldn't be doing. You should be focused on maximizing every dollar, tightening up your budget, increasing your income, lowering your expenses. Gambling, betting and gambling is just I wouldn't do it. But so overall, basically taking cash out on your credit card should be seen as a last resort and only done in emergencies. And this is a good way to get wiped out if you go to it immediately, if you let it get out of control. And I don't ever want to do it. And especially since several credit card providers have increased their advance fees for pulling out the cash. Like it costs more. Not only the APR and the interest rate, but the fee itself is like there's a minimum fee for just the act and the transaction. So basically, cash is this cash. This is making cash become more and more scarce and harder to come by. And at the same time as banks are reducing overhead and they're reducing operating expenses by laying off employees and running skeleton crews or no tellers at all, and just going pretty much like fully automated, like the Bank of America that I showed you guys in a previous video when I was traveling out west this summer. There was no staff, it was all computer screens and webcams and things like that. But the limited staff just adds to the stress and the compounded problems that we probably are going to see, that we may soon all be faced with, as the banks are over leveraged and people are broke and scared. So basically, Uh, there's a huge change occurring in our economy, full circle, and we're about to see the outcome and the effects of these changes. And I don't know if you can really blame them for it, but with so many uh, being wiped out by not just inflation and layoffs, but added losses in the stock market, the housing market slowing, and the real estate bubble deflating, on top of cryptocurrency platforms going bust and stealing folks' money. Yeah, I don't know if you can blame them. There's a huge shift coming. I think people still have some money, but I think that their their trust or their confidence in the market is lowering, making it so that they want to hang on to this money and not spend it. But on top of that, we have the potential threat of bank runs, which will basically bring the banks to their knees, and the people in a panic once they realize that the money that they thought they had sitting all nice and safe in the bank isn't actually there. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. People know it, understand it, but the money that you put in the bank, the money, the amount that shows on your statement, your balance, your app when you log in, the online banking or whatever, it's not really actually there per se. And if we see a mad dash for cash at the banks and a bank run, then you'll understand what I'm talking about. But this is pretty much being brought on by history of fractional reserve banking. And fractional reserve banking is a system of banking operations in I think like almost every country in the world does this. And it's a system where, like, fractional reserve banking is a system where banks that they take the deposits from the public, and they're required to hold a portion of their deposit liabilities in liquid assets as a reserve, but they're also allowed to lend the remainder to other borrowers. So if you put in $1,000 in your bank account, they don't have to keep $1,000 in the bank, even though your balance says it's $1,000. They could lend out a majority of that and just kind of bank on and bet on the fact that you're not going to come back and ask for all your money back immediately. But if you do this enough across enough accounts, then you have a lot of cash. But if everyone showed up at the same time and wanted all their money back out of the bank, then the banks, they wouldn't actually have the cash available to provide it to the account holders. And sometimes these other borrowers don't repay their loans that the banks made off of the money you deposited. And they default on these loans, these businesses go bankrupt, and then the banks never get that money back. So, you think about it, it's like you put money in the bank, they don't actually hold it all. They lend out a majority of it, and then they don't get that money back because the loans get defaulted on and not repaid or late, or they go into delinquency and things like that. So, as you can see, bank reserves are held as a cash. They're held as cash in the bank or as a balance in the bank's account at the central bank, but your particular branch may not have any cash. And the country's central bank determines the minimum amount that banks must hold in liquid assets. And this is called the reserve requirement or the reserve ratio. So this is that portion of the deposit that you put in that they actually have to keep, which isn't 100%. But most commercial banks hold more than this minimum amount as excess reserves, but some banks actually hold less and only hold the minimum required. So you can see the problem there if a bank that held the minimum had an influx of account holders asking for their money back. And just here recently, I had received so many emails from people saying that they contacted their bank after discovering their paychecks weren't deposited into their accounts. And that can be like a scary feeling. And then also some of their payment transactions hadn't posted either. And one of the problems that banks, this was actually a bank, was Commerce Bank, and they said that they were aware of the problem and said it was an issue with the company's nightly processing. But ultimately, it was an employee staffing issue, and they were seeing this more and more. So the bank warned customers that they may experience brief disruptions to their online banking and mobile banking logins as the company completes system processing. But with limited employees and probably the employees that they have being overworked, doing the work of two, doing the job of two or three or four or more people, and really probably only getting paid for one. Not all processes can be completed on time before the daily cutoffs. And these daily cutoffs, if you don't make the cutoff, then it forces the transaction to wait until the next banking business day. And basically, this can be really bad when it delays paychecks and direct deposits. But even worse when they botch mortgage payments, rent payments, car payments, child support payments. That just puts them off by a day. But if it puts them off by a day and then you hit a weekend or a holiday or a weekend and a holiday, I mean, you could be going 3, 4 days without seeing what you expected, on a Friday. You may not see it till a Tuesday or something like that. So, there's so many complaints about, there's also so many complaints that I'm receiving about debit cards that don't work and they're being locked out of their accounts online. So I just want everybody to do their best to prepare for these possible banking disruptions and these glitches. I don't want to see you guys get wiped out. I want to make sure you and your families are prepared for what's going on. And I, part of what I'll share with you guys on another video is the fact that, somebody came to me and ultimately they weren't prepared. They kind of ignored all the signals and all the signs and they found themselves in a bad situation. But at the end of the day, all it really does is it puts a strain on our relationship, which I thought we had a really good relationship. But now it's putting a strain on our relationship. They're talking about moving on to pretty much a state of homelessness, living out of their car or living in their car because they've fallen on hard times and they need help. So, my stance on that. I'm trying to provide them with some help and some assistance and get them pointed in the right track and on the right direction. But at the same time, I'm not just going to give away money. I'm not going to lend them money. I'm not going to let them borrow money because I don't think that's necessarily going to solve the problem. But, I do want to help them. And, maybe helping them may be helping them with a deposit somewhere. So I'm not giving them the money, but I'm paying a deposit somewhere else. Or, just some way to help them get the ball rolling so that they can build that snowball back up, get back on track, and try to avert, get past this hurdle that many are possibly going to face as the economy continues to put a strain on everybody. But at the end of the day, I think it's really gonna put a strain on our relationship. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you guys more about is the relationship side of this all, because families are going to be tested, couples are going to be tested, marriages are going to be tested. If you're dating, you're going to be tested. The relationship between parents and kids tested, especially if everyone isn't on the same page as we need to be doing this in sync. We need to be doing this in unison. We need to be, in formation, working towards moving these chains and reaching these goals together, while others are like, no, I'm good. I'll fly by the seat of my pants. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. We don't need to stockpile. And then shit hits the fan. And then they're like, all right, so what have y'all done? Because now we need to be ready. And it's like, well, we've been ready and you have been screwing off this entire time. So we're ready and you're not. And you're just going to sit here and ride our coattails and, and mooch off of us. And I just, it's something I want to discuss with you guys a little bit further. I don't have time right now on this video, but it's something I want to discuss with you guys further as far as being able to uh, try to prevent these things from happening, but at the same time, they will happen. And working to manage these situations and not let them just completely blow up and fall, the relationships fall apart unnecessarily. And let me comment below if you guys know what I'm talking about. Have experienced this at all before in the past, or maybe so far already as we're seeing shit hit the fan. But more importantly than the money, more importantly than the finance component, more importantly than investing, building a portfolio, building your wealth, and putting yourself and your family in a position to fight inflation. More important than stockpiling. More important than growing your farm and your homestead and harvesting crops and canning and everything, filling your pantry. More important than all that is going to be the relationship component, because honestly, with all that, but without good, solid relationships and meaningful relationships and friendships and love and family, what's it all for?